For decades, Sun Hill felt real because the faces inside it carried fear, duty, humor, and heartbreak like people we actually knew. But away from the radios, patrol cars, and interview rooms, time has taken some of those beloved actors from us. Today, we remember the Bill actors who have sadly passed away and the legacy they left behind. Kevin Lloyd as DC Lines, the scruffy, quick-witted detective better known as Tosh, whose humor and street instincts made him one of Sun Hill's most familiar faces. Born in 1949 in Derby, England, he was 39 when he joined the Bill in 1988. Tosh rarely looked like the slickest copper in the nick, but that was half the charm. He could joke his way through a grim shift, then suddenly spot the detail everyone else had missed. Lloyd stayed with the series for a decade, appearing in hundreds of episodes and becoming so closely identified with Tosh that viewers felt he belonged at Sun Hill as much as the station furniture. Away from the cameras, Lloyd struggled badly with alcohol dependence and was dismissed after arriving at work too intoxicated to film. He entered treatment soon afterward and died from asphyxia in 1998 at just 49. Tosh Lines was messy, funny, stubborn, and unmistakably human. Kevin Lloyd made him feel less like a TV detective and more like that copper everyone in the neighborhood somehow knew. Colin Tarrant as Andrew Monroe, the strict Sun Hill inspector who believed procedure mattered, standards mattered, and excuses definitely didn't. Born in 1952 in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, he was 38 when Monroe arrived in 1990. Monroe could freeze a room without shouting. Firm, fair, and painfully by the book, he often became the man younger officers feared disappointing more than the villains they were chasing. Tarrant played Monroe for 12 years and more than 500 episodes before returning to his theatrical roots, later appearing in Holby City, Heartbeat, Casualty, and acclaimed stage productions. Behind that disciplined screen presence, Tarrant struggled with depression in his later years. He died by suicide in 2012 at age 59, leaving colleagues and longtime viewers stunned by the loss. Andrew Monroe could be rigid enough to drive Sun Hill mad, but Tarrant gave him integrity beneath all those rules. You might argue with the inspector, but you always knew where he stood. George Rossi as DC Duncan Lennox, the street-smart Scottish detective whose dry wit and tough instincts gave Sun Hill a welcome dose of Glasgow grit. Born in 1961 in Govan, Scotland, Rossi was 36 when viewers first met Lennox in 1998. Duncan had little patience for nonsense, and even less for dodgy suspects. He could be blunt, funny, and fiercely loyal, with Rossi making every interrogation feel like Lennox had already worked out more than he was letting on. Once his Sun Hill days ended, Rossi moved through Holby City, Hustle, Ultimate Force, and Whitechapel, proving he was just as comfortable in darker crime drama as he was in long-running police television. Rossi had settled into a quieter family life with his wife and 2 children, keeping well clear of the tabloid circus. George Rossi died from pancreatic cancer in 2022 at age 60. Duncan Lennox never needed a big speech to own a scene. One suspicious look, one dry remark, and you knew somebody in Sun Hill was about to have a very uncomfortable afternoon. Ben Roberts as Derek Conway, the stern senior officer who liked discipline, proper procedure, and a station that ran without unnecessary nonsense. Born in 1950 in Bangor, Wales, he was 37 when Conway became one of Sun Hill's familiar authority figures. Conway could be stiff, pompous, and downright exhausting, but that was what made him work. Roberts gave him enough humanity underneath the uniform to make even his lectures oddly entertaining. Away from Sun Hill, viewers could later spot Roberts in Jane Eyre, Another Year, A Little Chaos, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, usually bringing that same dependable, old-school presence. Home life was far less dramatic than anything Conway dealt with at the Nick. Roberts lived in Derbyshire with his wife, former television presenter Helen Lloyd, and kept largely out of celebrity headlines. He died in 2021 at age 70. Conway spent years telling everyone else how to behave, so of course Sun Hill kept giving him absolute chaos. Roberts made the old governor frustrating, funny, and much more memorable than he had any right to be. Tony Scannell as Ted Roach, the hard-drinking, hot-headed detective sergeant who treated rules as useful advice rather than anything especially binding. Born in 1945 in Kinsale, Ireland, he was 39 when Roach first swaggered into Sun Hill in 1984. Ted could charm a witness, annoy his bosses, bend procedure, and still somehow convince himself he was the sensible one. Scannell gave him that rough, lived-in quality that made British cop drama feel properly authentic. After Roach became a fan favorite, Scannell turned up in family affairs, stage productions, and other television work, even slipping back into Ted's shoes for a brief return in 2000. His own life had a few rough turns as well. In 2002, Scannell was declared bankrupt after owing more than £42,000 in tax, though he continued working afterward. Tony Scannell died of natural causes in 2020 at age 74. Ted Roach was never polished, diplomatic, or particularly interested in behaving himself. That was the appeal. Scannell made Sun Hill's resident pain in the neck feel completely, gloriously real. Jeff Stewart as P.C. Hollis, Sun Hill's awkward, endlessly chatty copper whose heart was usually in the right place, even when his policing wasn't exactly textbook. Born in 1955 in Aberdeen, Scotland, he was 28 when Reg became part of the bill. Reg could bore a suspect into surrender, get tangled in station gossip, and somehow still come through when his mates needed him. Stewart made the oddball copper feel genuinely lovable, rather than just comic relief. Beyond Sun Hill, Stewart appeared in films including Dead Man Running and Under Jacob's Ladder, winning Best Actor at the Manhattan Film Festival for the latter, and showing there was much more to him than Reg. Today, Jeff Stewart is 70. In a wonderfully fitting twist, he helped real Hampshire police restrain a fleeing shoplifter in 2025, nearly 2 decades after hanging up Reg Hollis's uniform. Reg was never Sun Hill's action hero, which makes Stewart's real-life caller even better. Turns out the old copper still had a bit of police work left in him. Simon Rouse as DCI Jack Meadows, the sharp, intimidating detective boss who could smell a weak excuse from across the CID office. Born in 1951 in Bradford, Yorkshire, he was 40 when Meadows first appeared at Sun Hill. Jack was controlled, clever, and far too experienced to be easily impressed. He could give a dodgy detective one quiet look and make it feel worse than a full dressing down from half the station. Rouse brought serious stage pedigree to the role, having worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company before becoming one of the Bill's longest-serving faces. He later returned to theater and appeared in productions including Operation Mincemeat. Now 75, Rouse still carries the authority fans remember from Jack Meadows, and his long connection with British theater has remained an important part of his career well beyond Sun Hill. Meadows didn't need to slam desks or shout the Nick down. Rouse made quiet authority his weapon, and when Jack said he wanted answers, everybody suddenly found something useful to do. Eric Richard as Sergeant Cryer, the dependable old-school desk sergeant who knew Sun Hill, its villains, and its young coppers better than most people knew their own street. Born in 1940 in Margate, Kent, he was 44 when Bob Cryer became part of the original team. Cryer was firm without being a bully, and warm without going soft. He could hand out a proper bollocking, then quietly help the same officer 5 minutes later when the job got personal. Richard's career stretched well beyond the Nick, from Juliet Bravo and Casualty to Dunkirk. He also appeared in the Oscar-winning short film Stutterer, proving his screen presence still worked decades after Sun Hill. As of 2026, Eric Richard is 86. His family endured heartbreaking loss in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, when his 2-month-old grandson Charlie became the youngest known British victim of the disaster. Bob Cryer felt like the sergeant every station needed: experienced, decent, and impossible to fool. Richard made him less like a television copper and more like the bloke who actually kept the Nick running. Mark Wingett as DC Jim Carver, the fresh-faced young copper who grew from a rookie on the beat into one of Sun Hill's most battle-scarred detectives. Born in 1961 in Melton Mowbray, England, he was 23 when Carver first appeared in 1984. Jim started keen, decent, and a bit green, but years of booze, bad decisions, broken relationships, and ugly cases slowly wore him down. Wingett made that long decline feel painfully believable. Outside the bill, Wingett worked in films including Quadrophenia and later returned to television and stage work, while Jim Carver remained the role British audiences most closely associated with him. As of 2026, Mark Wingett is 65 and still pops up at fan events, conventions, and the Bill reunions, where Carver's complicated journey remains a big talking point with longtime viewers. Jim Carver began as the new bloke learning the job and ended up carrying half of Sun Hill's emotional baggage. Wingett gave the character one hell of a rough ride. Andrew Paul as PC Quinnen, the cheeky, lively Sun Hill officer whose humor and everyday decency made him feel like one of the lads rather than some polished TV copper. Born in 1961 in London, he was 23 when Quinnen first joined the Nick. Quinnen could have a laugh, bend the mood, and still get serious when the job turned nasty. Paul gave him an easy naturalism that fitted perfectly with the Bill's street-level style. Paul later became widely known as Kirk Sutherland's dad, Billy Mayhew, on Coronation Street, adding another long-running British soap to a career already packed with familiar television roles. Today, Andrew Paul is 65 and remains active across stage and screen, regularly working in theater and television instead of simply living off nostalgia from his Sun Hill days. Quinnen had that proper old-school beat copper charm, approachable, funny, and solid when it mattered. Paul made him feel like someone who'd actually know every shopkeeper on his patch. Trudy Goodwin as WPC Ackland, the calm, capable officer whose patience and quiet authority made her one of Sun Hill's most dependable faces. Born in 1951 in London, she was 32 when June Ackland became part of the original lineup. June never needed to shout to prove herself. She handled victims with warmth, colleagues with honesty, and awkward station politics with the sort of steady professionalism that kept the whole Nick grounded. Goodwin became one of the show's longest-serving cast members before moving on to Emmerdale, where she played Georgia Sharma and introduced herself to a completely different generation of viewers. At present, Trudy Goodwin is 74. Beyond acting, she has spoken publicly about supporting her daughter, singer and activist Ellie Jackson of LaRue, while continuing occasional appearances tied to British television nostalgia. June Ackland was never the loudest officer in Sun Hill, but that was exactly the point. Goodwin made calm competence feel every bit as memorable as any car chase or punch-up. Peter Ellis as C.H. Supton Brownlow, the polished senior officer whose calm authority made Sun Hill feel answerable to someone even higher up the chain. Born in 1936 in London, he was 48 when Brownlow became part of the station's early hierarchy. While everyone downstairs dealt with arrests, arguments, and dodgy paperwork, he carried the weight of command without turning every meeting into a shouting match. Ellis had already built a long career across British television and theater, with appearances in Z-Cars, Crown Court, and other familiar dramas, before becoming one of Sun Hill's most recognizable senior figures. As of 2026, Peter Ellis is 90. His work on the bill remains one of the roles viewers remember most clearly, especially for giving the station an old-school command structure that felt properly lived in. Brownlow wasn't the bloke kicking down doors. He was the man waiting upstairs afterward, ready to ask exactly why half the Nick had gone sideways. Alex Walkinshaw as Sergeant Dale Smith, better known as Smithy, the tough, straight-talking officer who grew from a young copper into one of Sun Hill's most dependable leaders. Born in 1974 in Barking, London, he first appeared on the show while still very young. Smithy had the kind of presence that made people listen. He could be rough around the edges, fiercely protective of his team, and never looked like someone who'd tolerate nonsense for more than 5 seconds. Walkinshaw later became a familiar face on Waterloo Road, Casualty, and Holby City, carrying that same solid, no-frills screen presence into a completely different set of uniforms and workplaces. Today, Alex Walkinshaw is 51 and remains active in British television. He has also returned to fan events and interviews where viewers still treat Smithy as one of the standout characters from the show's later years. Smithy had that proper Sun Hill backbone, loyal, stubborn, and built for trouble. Walkinshaw made him feel like the bloke you wanted beside you when a shift went properly pear-shaped. Sita Indrani as WPC Datta, the sharp, capable officer who brought a fresh voice and a different cultural perspective into Sun Hill during the show's earlier years. Born in 1963 in London, she was 21 when Datta first joined the team. Datta was intelligent, composed, and never written as someone who needed rescuing. Indrani gave her enough confidence to stand comfortably beside louder personalities without disappearing into the background. After the bill, Indrani moved through television, theater, and dance, appearing in projects such as Doctors, Catastrophe, and The Worst Week of My Life, while also building a career as a choreographer. As of 2026, Sita Indrani is 63. Her work has stretched beyond acting into movement and performance, giving her one of the more varied creative careers among the early Sun Hill cast. Datta didn't need a big dramatic entrance to make an impression. Indrani gave her a quiet confidence that fitted the Nick perfectly and helped make Sun Hill feel a bit more like modern Britain. Roberta Taylor as Inspector Gina Gold, the tough, sharp-tongued governor who could silence a room of Sun Hill coppers with one look. Born in 1948 in London, she was 54 when Gina arrived at the Nick in 2002. Gina was blunt, funny, and fiercely protective of her team. She could hand out a bollocking 1 minute, then quietly back the same officer when things got properly ugly. Taylor was already well known as Irene Raymond in EastEnders, and later brought that same mix of grit and warmth to stage, television, and her best-selling memoir, Too Many Mothers. Her life had plenty beyond acting, including writing and theater work that drew on her East End roots. Roberta Taylor died in 2024 at age 76 after an infection following a fall. Gina Gold didn't suffer fools, dodgy excuses, or weak tea. Taylor made her the sort of boss Sun Hill feared, respected, and secretly loved having around. Stephen Beckett as PC Jarvis, the young Sun Hill officer whose straight-up approach and restless energy fitted neatly into the station's fast-moving early years. Born in 1967 in Herne Bay, Kent, he was 24 when Jarvis appeared on the bill. Jarvis had the look of a copper still learning where confidence ended and trouble began. Beckett played him with enough edge to make even routine street work feel unpredictable. He later became a familiar British television face through Coronation Street, Doctors, Holby City, and other dramas, shifting easily between police, medical, and soap territory. As of 2026, Stephen Beckett is 59 and continues to work across television and theater, keeping a career going well beyond the short spell that first brought him into Sun Hill. Jarvis may not have become one of the Nick's longest-serving legends, but Beckett gave him proper beat copper energy, young, keen, and always half a step from learning something the hard way. Christopher Ellison as D.I. Burnside, the hard-nosed detective with a gravelly voice, sharp suits, and the sort of attitude that suggested rules were mainly for other people. Born in 1946 in London, he was 38 when Burnside first appeared. Burnside could charm a villain, intimidate a suspect, and bend procedure without losing a wink of sleep. Ellison made him feel dangerous enough that even other coppers knew not to push their luck. The character became so popular that Ellison later led the spin-off Burnside, while also appearing in EastEnders, Casualty, and plenty of other British television favorites. Today, Christopher Ellison is 79 and still gets remembered first for Frank Burnside, a role that became one of the Bill's most recognizable exports beyond Sun Hill itself. Burnside was never the copper you invited round for a quiet cuppa. Ellison gave him swagger, menace, and just enough charm to make breaking the rules look dangerously entertaining. Lisa Maxwell as DS Samantha Nixon, the sharp, determined detective who brought a tougher, more modern edge to Sun Hill's CID team. Born in 1963 in London, she was 38 when Samantha became part of the Bill in 2002. Samantha was ambitious, clever, and never afraid to push harder than the people around her. Maxwell gave her enough bite to make office politics feel almost as dangerous as the criminals outside. After Sun Hill, Maxwell became widely known as a panelist on Loose Women and continued acting in television and theater, moving easily between drama, comedy, and live entertainment. As of 2026, Lisa Maxwell is 62. She has spoken openly about career setbacks, reinvention, and the realities of staying visible in British television after decades in the business. Samantha Nixon wasn't built to sit quietly at the back of CID. Maxwell gave her drive, attitude, and the sort of confidence that made sure Sun Hill always knew she was in the room. Andrew Lancel as D.I. Neil Manson, the ambitious detective whose polished manner often hid a far more complicated mix of ego, pressure, and personal baggage. Born in 1970 in Morecambe, England, he was 32 when Manson arrived at Sun Hill. Neil liked control, hated looking weak, and could make even a routine briefing feel like a test of who really ran CID. Lancel played that tension without turning him into a simple villain. Away from the Bill, Lancel became best known as Frank Foster in Coronation Street, a much darker role that earned him major attention and showed just how far he could push an unlikable character. Today, Andrew Lancel is 56 and remains active across stage and television, with theater work becoming a major part of his career alongside occasional screen appearances. Neil Manson could be charming, difficult, and seriously hard work. Lancel made him the sort of boss you might respect on Monday and want to avoid completely by Friday. Ian Fletcher as DC Skase, the dependable detective whose low-key manner helped balance out some of Sun Hill's louder personalities. Born in 1966 in England, he was 30 when Skase first became part of the CID team. Skase wasn't flashy, and that worked in his favor. Fletcher played him like a copper who preferred getting the job done to making a big show of it. His later credits included Family Affairs, Doctors, Holby City, and other British television dramas, keeping him firmly in the world of familiar character acting. At present, Ian Fletcher is 60 and continues to be associated with the solid, understated style of British television policing that made the Bill so watchable. Skase was never the bloke kicking off in every scene. Fletcher made quiet competence feel useful, and in Sun Hill, that was often exactly what the Nick needed. John Bowler as PC Roger Valentine, the seasoned Sun Hill copper whose dry humor and steady manner made him feel like a bloke who'd already seen every excuse in the book. Born in 1952 in London, He was 51 when Roger arrived in 2004. Roger rarely chased attention. He got on with the job, handled difficult punters without unnecessary drama, and brought a bit of old-school patience to a station that was becoming increasingly chaotic. Bowler was already familiar to British viewers from watching Peak Practice and Auf Wiedersehen, Pet. He later appeared in DCI Banks, Casualty, and other homegrown dramas. As of 2026, John Bowler is 73, turning 74 in September. His background also includes classical training at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, giving that understated copper a proper theatre pedigree. Roger Valentine wasn't flashy, bent, or forever kicking off. Bowler made him feel like the dependable copper who simply turned up, knew his patch, and got on with it. Graham Cole as PC Stamp, the big-hearted beat copper whose booming voice, imposing frame, and genuine decency made Tony one of Sun Hill's most recognizable uniforms. Born in 1952 in Willesden, England, he was 32 during the show's early days. Tony looked like he could handle himself in a scrap, but he was often at his best, talking to ordinary people on the street. Cole gave him warmth underneath the uniform and never made him just the big bloke. British viewers also saw Cole in Doctor Who, Only Fools and Horses, Law and Order UK, and plenty of pantomime and stage work. He even trained as an advanced police driver to make Tony's work behind the wheel look right. Today, Graham Cole is 74 and holds an OBE. He has spent years supporting police charities and other good causes, keeping a genuine connection with the emergency service world long after Sun Hill closed its doors. Tony Stamp became almost part of the furniture at the Nick in the best possible way. Cole made him the sort of copper you'd actually be relieved to see turning up. Lisa Geoghegan as WPC Page, the caring but increasingly complicated officer whose years at Sun Hill took Polly from dependable beat copper to some seriously dark territory. Born in 1966 in Southwark, London, she was 26 when Polly became a regular in 1992. Polly could be warm, funny, and fiercely loyal, but her storylines eventually pushed her into affairs, emotional breakdowns, and even prison. Geoghegan made those twists feel painfully human rather than pure soap madness. Before Polly, she was already known from Tucker's Luck, Big Deal, and Desmond's. Years after leaving the Nick, she returned to screens with appearances in Casualty and EastEnders. At present, Lisa Geoghegan is 60. Motherhood played a major role in her decision to step away from the bill, choosing more time with her children after spending years on one of British television's busiest sets. Polly Page started as one of Sun Hill's safest pairs of hands and ended up carrying some of its messiest baggage. Geoghegan made every rough turn worth watching. Their faces, voices, and unforgettable moments helped make The Bill a true British TV classic. Thank you for watching. Share which actor you remember most, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more classic TV stories.